going. But this is perfect for a shady spot, a place that doesn't have a lot of light. Very trimmable. So, if you want to keep it 3 by 3, perfect. It'll be great. So you're looking for a pot that's twice as wide. So you're looking at something like this, and twice as deep, just so you have room for roots to grow. As this is a shade plant, I have chosen a couple of Heucheras, which really go with the variegation on the plant. You want me to put a chair up?
Let all that fit on there.
Yeah, that way is better. Perfect. Sorry. Okay. So these would go like right in front. The other thing to think about when you're looking at your pots, are you going to be looking at it from just the front? Are you going to be able to see it all the way around? Because you're going to place things differently if that is the case. Most of my pots go up against the wall, or so I can usually put everything on one side and then work my way out. But if you can always do, 4, so you have front and back on each one. Stay. And then you would have your spillers, which would go like here. And these colors will bring out, the green, the yellow just highlights it, and then the purple just makes it pop. So again, this is just a shady selection. And they're like I said, there's no right or wrong. You can hundreds of different choices. So be creative and change it up. If you want to, you could do annuals up front. Pansies would be fine, just to give you some pop of color. Okay. I think this one was the only one that I brought that didn't have a pot. So this pot here, I just put a mum in it, and I can't take all the credit because I had girls up here helping me put these together. So thank you, everyone that helped me put these together. So this is basically a mum pot. So the mums will bloom till we really get cold, and then they'll kind of shut down. Better? Okay. And the mums, once they kind of start to fade, if you kind of give them a quick deadhead, there are new buds down in here. So they'll just continue to bloom until we really, really get cold. When I say really get cold, that means we're in the 30s during the day or 40s in the day, and we're in the 20s at night. Most plants will start shutting down at that point. The nice thing about mums, if you are into birds, the birds love this guy. When it starts going to seed, you will be entertained for hours with the little birds that come through here. The little finches love this thing. So don't cut it too late when you look for your buds, but just let it go to seed. It'll die back anyway, and then it comes back from the bottom in the spring. We have added some herbs to this pot as my spiller. This is oregano, and then on this side we added some chocolate mint. You do have to kind of be careful with the mint because it can take over a pot pretty quickly. So kind of keep it contained, and you might want to switch it out every once in a while just so it doesn't overwhelm your pot. Dusty Miller is always a great option. It is in the Artemisia family, so it does last through this winter. So you'll have this beautiful gray color all winter long. You could also switch it out instead of the Dusty Miller, do an Ornamental Cabbage. And these are gorgeous and they can get really big. These are ornamental. You don't want to eat them. They're really bitter. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but they're really, really bitter. They come in different colors. So this one's a white one. They also come in reds and pinks. I do have a peacock one that kind of has really ruffly leaves on it down there. This pot here is very simple. This is our new grass. This is red hood Mescantas grass. It's one of the smaller grasses that we have. Mescantas. Mescantas usually will get 5 by 5. This one gets 3 by 3. And the uniqueness of it is that the stems actually start turning red, and then these will turn bright red as well. So it's going to be gorgeous. So we're really excited about this grass. And I just put some pansies in here just to add a pop of color. This pot is basically perfect for this grass, and you don't necessarily, it won't fit with the pansies, but for the first year you would be fine. You wouldn't be able to do it after that because the grass is just going to take over this pot. Probably in a couple of years you would have to repot it because it is kind of a tight squeeze. This orange pot here, we put in some Virginia creeper. This is a vine which would work for a while in this pot. They can get pretty aggressive later on. So probably three or 4 years you could keep this in there. You would have to kind of keep him more contained, but easily doable. He does go to sticks in the wintertime, but he absolutely beautiful fall color. So you always want something that has some pretty good height in your pot. It doesn't necessarily have to be 4 feet, but you know. We have some more Dusty Miller in here, some more chocolate mint. This set of pansies is the harvest mix, so it usually has the orange, yellows, and purples, which is really pretty. Alyssum as the spiller. Now, alyssum won't handle too much of cold, so usually by January it'll fade out. The Dusty Miller, like I said, will last, and we have some more oregano in there. This pot here, the red one, I kind of created the Christmas pot. So you can take these guys into your Christmas season by just switching out some pansy color. You know, if you take the red out and put this in, you're more Thanksgiving, and then you go straight on into Christmas. So they can be interchangeable, and you can add things or subtract things. Just pull them out and start all over. This is a Alberta Spruce. They are a very slow growing tree. They will only grow 2 or 3 inches a year. So perfect tree for a pot. You don't have to worry about transplanting it later on, as long as you get a significant pot to start out with. The Dusty Miller is one of our favorites because it's just so pretty. And these are just red pansies. Before I forget, email list for anything that we talk about on this class. We will send it out to you. So let me start this over here.
If we've already given it.
Well, it's specific for this class. So if you were here last year or last week, you wouldn't necessarily receive this class stuff. You could also, instead of doing the Alberta Spruce, we have snapdragons down there that would give you some height as far as the filler goes. Easily mixed out. White pansies also make the pot pop. we're going to span this way. This is one of the biggest pots. And like I said, when you start looking for your pots, really think about what you want to put in them. So this is a pink Regal Miss Muley grass. Beautiful grass. This grass will get about 3 feet tall and wide, and it's absolutely gorgeous. When the sunlight hits this, it just vibrant. Grasses will die back in the wintertime, but they are really pretty to look at in the wintertime. The wind blows through them, so they do add that winter interest for you. This one is pretty perennial, so it will come back. So in the springtime, you would just cut the grass back about 6 to 6 inches above ground. These are cone flowers. They will come back as well. Those you just let die back and then just kind of take the leaves off as necessary. These are Dianthus, and Dianthus is kind of a biannual here. So if you take care of it, mine usually last a couple of years in my pots. So you can utilize them that way. They don't like a lot of water, so once it's kind of like the snapdragons. Snapdragons are kind of almost perennial here, but when we start our pots with a lot of water in the summertime, when we do the mica and some of that stuff that needs more water because we're so hot, the snapdragons don't like that, so they'll usually die off for you. This is another option in there for you. This is autumn sage, beautiful smaller shrub. Hummingbirds love this guy. Comes in a variety of different colors. There's reds, pinks, purples. The blue note is a true blue color. So a great option for right around your patio area where you can enjoy the birds. Yeah.
Somebody asked the name of that grass again.
This is the Regal Miss Muley grass. Mom's, again, favorite fall plant. Really, really pretty, and they're just gorgeous right now. This is Karl Forrester grass. So Karl Forrester is a clump grass. So he will get about 3 feet wide and tall as far as the grass mound. And then he shoots up these really pretty yellow flowers, stalks that look like wheat. Really, really pretty upright grass. Gorgeous in clumps or in threes in your yard, but they would make an excellent filler in a pot, a big enough pot. I just threw some beets in here. These are Bull's Red beets, and they just have beautiful color. So you can actually let these grow all season and pull them out as necessary. And then in the spring, you can, or you can use the greens. You can still use the greens for your salads or cooking or whatever, but they will produce fruit. So, but it's a really pretty combination as far as color goes. This is the Heavenly Bamboo, Nandina. Nandinas in a pot are just absolutely gorgeous. He is starting on his winter color, and he will be fire red by the time Christmas rolls around. Nandinas are a great plant. They're evergreen, very easy to care for. Once a week, twice a week, depending on where your location is and how much wind and stuff they get. But really nice. I did have to trim mine early in the spring just because it kind of dried out on the edges, but he's great. I mean, you want to do some trimming anyway just to make that fuller as far as the plant overall look for your pot. Ken, we're going to move. So this pot here, I actually put a Green Mountain Boxwood in. This is another great plant that gives you some height. because the Green Mountain Boxwood will get about 6 feet tall and only 2 or 3 feet wide. So in a nice pot, it's kind of a nice sentinel to put in front of your door or on the side of your door or something like that. Again, just a few mums on the side just to give you some pops of color. I threw some snapdragons and some lemon thyme in here just to keep it spilling out. The thyme and the oregano are evergreen. The mint usually dies back in the wintertime, but comes back in full force. Okay, over here, we're panning again. Keep up with me. I did a succulent pot, and you can ask Ken. I'm big on succulents and deserty plants. I just love them. I have a bright star yucca that looks very similar to this color guard in a pot. It's in a bright blue pot, cobalt. He's phenomenal. The nice thing about both the Bright Star and the Color Guard is they kind of turn pink in the wintertime. So all this yellow margarine will turn that beautiful pink color. They stay green, so to speak, all winter long. They don't die back. So you have color out there all season long. You don't have to water very often with your desert plants. The biggest difference is from all of the rest of these pots is I would put a cactus mix in this pot when I planted it. I also did a lavender in this pot here. This is all pretty drought tolerant stuff. Lavender, I have a rainbow ascot euphorbia. It's very similar to the gopher plant. It's in the same family. He is also evergreen. He does also get the pink. He's starting to turn pink right now as far as his margins go. So it'll give you a beautiful green color. I threw a brake light yucca in here. Obviously this pot is too small for everything that I put in there, but I wanted to show you the idea of what I was thinking. I also put a succulent in here. Succulents are really cool in pots, and you kind of have to learn a little bit about them. So there are different types of succulents. What I have found is the ones that have flat leaves like this usually die back to the crown in the wintertime. The ones like Angelina, blue spruce, the ones that have the little needles, they stay green all winter so that you don't lose them. So usually in some of my pots, I will do a little bit of both so I don't just have an empty pot sitting there all winter long. These are great. The monarchs love these, and it's nice to have that late winter or fall flower for your butterflies and bees. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the bees are crazy right now. I think they know that it's getting cold and they're doing their last hurrah. But it's a great pot to have. And like I said, I just love my desert plants. So there's a lot you can do with this type of stuff. So I think what I'll do is I'll pull this over here and just kind of go through how to go about planting. Sorry about all the moving parts on this, guys. Okay. All right. So when you begin to set up your potting station, our potting soil obviously comes in a bag. Usually it's pretty dry. So before you start, I always put a bucket or a large can or something, and I start mixing the soil. Because if you start with really dry soil, it's really hard to get it moist. Have you ever noticed that? So what I'll do is I'll put it in a bucket and then just put water in it until I get it nice and moist. And when I do that, I just work it in, and then until it's really nice and completely damp throughout. This does a couple of things. You know that that soil is going to be moist, so you don't have to drown your plant trying to get everything wet, and you know what's there, you know. And once you do start watering, sometimes when you water, it'll create holes, and so you don't know whether it's completely wet or not. So I always wet it before you start planting, and it just makes it easier on everybody, especially your plants, because they want to be hydrated when they're first planted, but they don't want to drown as you're trying to hydrate the soil. So usually what I will do when I go to plant is kind of start placing my plants, or you can take your cart when you go shopping and do your shopping cart as your pot. And then you just kind of start, okay, I'm going to put that there. I'm going to do these here. I'll do these here. And maybe I'll just throw this guy right here. And there's your pot. So then you can take your stuff, push it aside, and start filling your pot up. And when you come in, if you ask for help, we will all do this. You know, we'll say, okay, what do you want to start with? And then we'll just kind of create it on your shopping cart so you have it. Amy will always make you take a picture of it so you remember what it looks like when you get home. So you're ready to go, because we want to make it easier for you. So I picked out this little Hamline fountain grass. He will go dormant, but he's really cute. He will get about 2 feet tall when he's done. And again, this pot's going to be really full when I do this, but I thought it would look good. Yeah. We don't want to bury the microphone. And usually when I get to the bottom, I will pack it down some so I don't get that too much settling. It gives me a nice base.
One of the handouts that I'm going to give is a video that Lisa did.
Perfect.
About what should you put in the bottom of your pot.
Good.
I think the short answer is potting soil.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So a lot of people will like to put the, pea gravel. You really don't have to do that. Most potting soils have very good drainage. So you don't need that pea gravel in the bottom. The only time I would put any type of rock or any of that stuff is if you have a tall pot and you're putting something kind of tall in it. Because like if you put a small juniper or something that's going to catch the wind in a tall, slender pot, you might lose that pot. So you might want to weight it down. If you get a big pot and you're just going to put small stuff on top, you can definitely fill it up. I use recyclable milk cartons. I'll put the lid on it, squish it, or just leave them full and fill up that space. And then I'll put the dirt on top of it. That way you don't use 15 bags of potting soil for little pansies and stuff. But pansies and stuff only need about 1 foot of dirt. So it kind of depends on what you're going to actually plant. So I still need a little more dirt here. Okay, I think I'm good. The next thing we're going to do is maybe get this out of the pot. I should have done this before. There we go. So when you take your plant out of your pot, you don't want to just sit it in here. Most nursery stock is going to be a little, and it depends on when it comes in. Recently, most of the garden vendors out there are putting plants out there's so much demand that they're putting out stuff so fast that a lot of stuff won't even get rooted properly, which makes us upset, and we usually send it back. But sometimes towards the end of the season, you'll start getting some root bounding, which isn't horrible as long as it's not too bad. There's always ways of fixing it. So what I'm doing here is just kind of pulling some of this stuff off because it's all packed together. And we want those roots to kind of go out so that they'll fill in. Or I'll take a knife and cut an X on the bottom. I mean, you don't want to destroy the root ball, but you do want to cut it open. And that's on everything that you plant, whether it's a tree, a big tree or a shrub. You always want to make sure those roots have somewhere to go. And don't worry about hurting it. And like I said, unless you're beating up the root ball. I think we're just going to go with a couple of things in here. Because these are smaller, I need to put some more dirt in here. And I'm really messy when it comes to doing this stuff. Okay. What do we want? Cabbage or the Alyssa? Okay. All right. And then I would fill it in, pack it as I fill. I usually do just a handful at a time and then just kind of push it in there. I want it pretty tight just because I don't want any settling. I want it to be able to wet it all the way through. And then water it in lightly. If you moistened your soil, you wouldn't need to do that. I put some root and grow in this water before I started. So the root and grow is already in there. And then I would just top it off with a little bit more of that just to stimulate those roots and get them moving. Really quick about pottery. Your pots are important to you and your landscape. I mean, they're almost like a work of art out there. We just got in our first shipment of pottery. We had 15 pallets out there that are ready to go. It is good ceramic. It's been specially fired, so it will not freeze. It will not crack. So you don't have to worry about emptying your pots. Some places in the Midwest, when it gets really cold, you do have to empty your pots. You can't have stuff to enjoy. But here we do get cold, so but like I said, these are specially fired. It's special pottery or clay as well that will handle that cold. You can go with plastics. With our hot sun, they will decompose pretty quickly. So you just have to decide which way you want to go, how much money you want to spend on your pots. Fertilizing, we always use we call this the meat and potatoes fertilizer. This is the water's all-purpose. It is what we use to plant all our trees, shrubs, pots, everything else in your yard. We try to make it simple. We do have 3 fertilizers that we always recommend. It's the all-purpose. We have a fruit and vegetable, and then we have the flower power. If we're doing a springtime pot, the flower power is great because it keeps these blooms going and going. You do it every 2 weeks. It's water soluble, and it just keeps those flowers going and going because it has a high middle number, and that's really important for the flowers and the roots. So that's what you would use it for your baskets and such. This is kind of meat and potatoes, and so it's just overall. And that's basically what you need for a pot. Watering, you want to be careful in the wintertime. Plants don't lose because there's not a lot of heat, they don't grow immensely unless we do have a warm spell. They will grow a little bit. They kind of need temperatures above 60 to really have decent movement as far as roots go. But keep them moist during the winter, not cold or dry. And always check in the afternoons, because your soil, it depends on whether you have your moisture meter or your fingers. When I put my finger in a pot in the morning, it feels wet just because it's cold. So do it in the afternoon when it's a little warmer, and then you can actually judge better. Or use the moisture meter. Usually that works good. But you need to poke it down further. You don't want to just do the top. You want to go down further in the bottom. Any questions? Yes. You know, there are so many different ways of doing things. I don't think it's necessary, because if your potting soil is moist, I mean, if your plant is really dry, I would say yes, absolutely. You know, I usually sometimes will take stuff home and it takes me 2 or 3 days, and it's like, oops, I forgot to water you. And then I go to pot it, and then I will, you know, let it sit in water and do that. But if it's moist, I don't worry about it too much. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'll get you next.
You said the center plant, you want it twice as wide, twice as deep. If you're going to put in like really a lot of plants around it, would you want it then to be wider?
Probably. I mean, like I said, I could have brought some really big stuff, but it's hard to do. So yeah, I mean, you can get a pot whatever size you want, and it just kind of depends on what you decide to put in it.
But does it not, I mean, is it okay, all these ones are very tight?
Yeah.
That still works?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Until you know, you could stuff a lot of stuff in at the beginning, but as your plant gets bigger year after year, you're going to have less and less space to do the pretty stuff on the outside. Yes.
When you change out your annuals,
Uh-huh.
how much dirt do you have to take out? Because a lot of it's just full of roots.
Right. And you get a lot of that, but I try to think I'm sorry. Question. She asked how much of it, when you take out your annuals from one season to the other, how much dirt do you have to take out? I usually try to go a little bit bigger than what the plant, you know, if my plant was this big, I try to go a little bit more, because I know that I need that space to put something else in there. And if you disturb some of the roots on this guy here, it's okay, because it's just going to refresh him a little bit and get him going, unless you're digging him all out. If you do that and you need to dig him out just to get more roots out, that's fine. Just use the root and grow when you put it back in there and get everything going again. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're starting out with a container, how's a good way to select, if you want it to be perennials, ones that'll go together when you're looking at plants? I put things together that I can tell some are not dry. So is there
So her question is how to go about selecting plants that go into pots. And that's a really good question, because you want stuff that have the same water habits. Like if you put something like that in with something like this, they're not going to do well. So most of your leafy stuff does like more water. But always ask. That's what we're here for. And we pride ourselves in being very, very knowledgeable. And you can selectively water a little bit, but think of like plants and read some of the tags, because they will say, you know, keep moist. Anything that says keep moist, you could put all in the same pot. Or like gaillardias are pretty drought tolerant. The lavender is very drought tolerant. You could do some of that in the same type of pot. But when in doubt, just ask us and we'll be happy to help you with that for sure. Anything else? Yes. What was the name of the pink succulent? This is the cherry sparkler sedum. Like I said, sedum's autumn joy sedum is a tall variety of this. The blue spruce and the Angelina are the ones with the kind of needle-like spikes. There's also Delaspoma, which is the ice plant. That one's also evergreen as far as succulents go. All righty. Yes?
Are all of these plants needing full sun or kind of north-facing porch?
Yes, the first, her question is she has a north-facing porch. Was any of these shady? I only brought one shady plant up here, which was the first one I did, which were the holly and the heucheras. So the hollies and the heucheras are great shade plants. We do have a shade section, so we can help you with a pot like that. And the nice thing about the heucheras is that most years they will stay evergreen, you know, unless we get really cold. So you get these beautiful leaves all season. Okay, any questions online? Are we good? Oh, we got one more question. Cool. Yeah. Unfortunately, her question is how does some of these grasses do in the wind? And unfortunately, the wind is probably the most detrimental to the ornamental grasses. Unfortunately, but a light breeze is nice because you do see the movement, but sometimes it'll, you know, if we get winds like we had last Monday, I mean, that was horrible. But it would probably have, but I don't know, the ivory feathers in the parking lot did pretty good. I mean, we found little tufts all over the place, but they held up pretty well. It just, I think it depends on how far gone your grasses are. Whether they start breaking and stuff. Usually while they're still green, you do have some extra time there. Once they start drying out, then they will be more susceptible to the wind. Yeah. Yeah. Deer, especially this one. Her question was about deer. The Nandina is pretty deer proof. They might nibble a little bit depending on how desperate they are. With the monsoons this year, hopefully they won't be as desperate as they were last year. I did hear from some people that a lot of things took a hit, even that were supposed to be deer proof. I had catmint that took a hit, and most of them, usually catmint's fine. I don't have to worry about that, but yeah, they took it to the ground. So they were really, really desperate. So it just depends. We do have a deer and rabbit sheet down there. Like I said, it just depends on how desperate they are as far as that stuff goes. All righty. With that being said, I want to say thank you for all of you guys to showing up. I appreciate it very much. If you have any questions, we're here. If you guys want to do any pots of your own, we will be happy to help. We have free potting soil up here if you want to pot it up yourself. We do a service. If you guys come in and want to pick out pots and plants, we can pot them up for you. We charge per inch for however big it is to pot things for you. So you can drop your plants off or pick them out and leave them here for a half hour, and we will pot them up for you. Okay, Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.